All right, in today's lesson, we're going to be reviewing Box and Whisker Plots in the 5-number summary. We did learn about these earlier in the year. I'm just going to kind of sketch one so you can kind of see what I'm talking about and kind of remember. Down here we had like a number line, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, whatever, and then we had our 5-number summary. We had that box and those 2 whiskers. Hopefully that's coming back to you a little bit. We are going to review how to go through all of these steps. I'm going to go kind of quick because we have learned it before. If you're still struggling with it, feel free to Google other videos. I'll try to find more resources and put it in the additional resources folder that is on Schoology in this week's remote learning folder. So just to help you out a little bit more. All right, so a box and whisker plot, or a 5-number summary, divides our data into quartiles. Quartiles, remember if we look at that root word, core, means 4. So it divides our data into 4 equal groups. Okay. The 5-number summary includes the minimum value. We call that the min. That's the smallest number in the data set. That's going to be our first part of our box and whisker plot. Then it also has our maximum value. We just call it the max. That's the largest number in the data set, or the biggest number. That's going to be our dot at the very end of our whisker on the right. Our lower quartile, we call that Q1. That's the middle of the lower half of the data set. Okay, and we'll talk about that. That's going to be this point right here. This should say first quartile, but we'll call it the lower quartile. That works too. So then our second quartile, or our Q2, is the middle of the entire data set. Remember what we call the middle of the entire data set is the median. Remember, middle, median, they both have that D in the middle of the words. Is the middle of the entire data set. We list at least to greatest. We cross off each side until we get to one number in the middle. If we have 2 numbers in the middle, we add them up and divide by 2, or we find what number is right in the middle of those 2 numbers. Hopefully this is starting to come back to you a little bit. Then we have our third quartile, or our upper quartile. That's Q3. And this is the middle of the upper half of our data set. So we have Q1, Q2, Q3, min, and max. Those are our 5 numbers that our 5-number summary includes. All right, the very first step is always to order it from least to greatest. So you'll notice this list right here is already least to greatest, least value, greatest value. So this least value is our min. This greatest value is our max. I was going to say the first thing you do. After we listen to least to greatest, we find our min, our max. We are going to cross off each side to find that median. You can't find Q1 or Q3 until you find the middle. So you can't find the middle of the lower half and the middle of the upper half until you divide it into halves. We're just going to make sure we have the same number of crosses on each side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. See, that's why we double check 6. So the median is going to be right in between 30 and 30. So we'd add up 30 plus 30 is 60, divided by 2, our Q2 is 30. Then we divide it into an upper and lower half. Remember, when we have 2 numbers in the middle, we include the smaller one, or the one on the left, with the lower half. We include the one on the right with the upper half. Remember, if we have just like 1 number in the middle, so this was our Q2, we crossed off and we evenly just had 1 number in the middle, we don't include it in either group. Okay, but when there's 2 in the middle, we include this one on the left in the lower half, 1 on the right in the upper half. When there's 1 number in the middle, we just leave it there and make the groups without it. All right, then we would cross off and find our middle of the lower half. 1, 1, 2, 2. We're going to be left with 2 numbers in the middle, so we add up 20 plus 26 to get 46. Divide that by 2 to get 23 is our Q1. All right, and then we do the same thing on the upper half. cross off, 1, 1, 2, 2. We're left with two numbers in the middle. We'd add 33 plus 35 to get 68. We'd divide that by 2 to get 34. So our Q3 would be 34. Okay, let's do an example. The very first thing we do is we must list at least to greatest. You're welcome. Already done for you. All right, so next thing we're going to do is find our min and max. Our min is our smallest number. Max is our largest number. Okay, if you're starting to feel confident, it's starting to come back to you, I want you to pause and try this on your own. If not, just follow along. Next thing we have to do is find our Q2. So we're going to cross off each side till we get left with one or two numbers in the middle. Here we have two numbers in the middle, so we will add them up. 20 plus 15 is 35. 35 divided by 2. 2 goes into 3 once. We subtract. Bring down our 15. 2 goes into 15 7 times. Subtract, that's 14. We're left with a 1 remainder. We have no more numbers left to remember, so we add a decimal and a 0 to bring it down. 2 goes into 10, 5. From there we have no remainder, so this is going to be, and remember that's our Q2 is the one in the middle, 17.5. Now we have two numbers left in the middle, so we include the 15 with the lower half, 20 with the upper half. And we repeat those steps. So we find our Q1, which is the lower half, cross cross, we're left with 10 and 15. So we add 10 plus 15, 25. We divide 25 by 2, goes in there once. 2 goes into 5 twice, that's 4. A lot of numbers, and we have a 1 remainder. So we add a decimal and a 0, bring it down. 2 goes into 10 5 times. This ends up being 12.5. We do the same thing for the upper half. Cross off, cross off. 25 and 30 would give us a 55. 55 divided by 2 goes in there twice, that's 4. 2 goes into 15 7 times, that's 14. Left with a 1 remainder, have to add a decimal, bring down our 0. 27. Oops. Remember when we were doing our statistics unit that you can use a calculator, so you don't have to be doing all of this longhand. Sorry, I probably told you that a little too late. You can be using a calculator in order to find these numbers as well. You don't have to be doing the long division. All right, I want you to try to pause the video, try this next one on your own, resume the video to check, or just when you get stuck. For watching now, we should have already attempted this problem and have at least our min and max done. I feel very confident that all of you should be able to get those numbers. Min is our smallest, max is our biggest. Next we find our Q2, so we cross off the same number on each side till we're left with 1 or 2 in the middle. In this case we're left with 1, so our Q2 is just 20. Now when we have one number in the middle, we don't include it in either group, and we do the same process. We're left with 10 and 15. Over here we were left with 10 and 15. We can start to see some patterns, so it's going to be 12.5. Same thing for our upper half. We're left with 25 and 30. Over here we were left with 25 and 30, so it's going to give us the same answer as well. All right, so that's how we find our 5-number summary. Now that we know how to find a 5-number summary, or we've reviewed that, we're going to go into how to make the box and whisker plot from those numbers. Okay, so a box and whisker plot represents data set along a number line by using the 5, and I'm just going to use a number sign, number summary. A box and whisker plot will look like this. The least value is this first dot, which connects the whisker to the first quartile, the Q1. We then draw a box from Q1 to Q3. We have our median, our Q2, which we just draw a line down where that will be, and a whisker out to our max. Okay, and that's our box and whisker plot. Very first thing we do when we do a box and whisker plot is we draw a number line that can show the data in equal intervals. Okay, since this is just a diagram, there's no numbers down here on the number line because we're not using actual numbers, we're just labeling what it looks like. Very first thing we want to do is mark the median. Okay, just with a dot. And we can do any of these steps right here in any order. You just have to put all your dots for your 5-number summary on the line. Doesn't matter the order. Right here can be in any order. Then we mark the median of the lower half, which is Q1. Then we mark the median of the upper half, which is Q3. And when I'm saying mark, I'm just saying put a dots on where those numbers are on the number line. We mark the max by putting a dot where that is on the number line. Mark the lowest number, the min, by putting a dot where that number is on the number line. We draw a box between the Q1 and Q3. We draw a vertical line through the median. That should just stay in the box though. Got a little sloppy there. Draw a vertical line going up and down through the median or the Q2. Last but not least, we draw 2 horizontal whiskers from Q1 out to the min and from Q3 out to the max. Right. If this is coming back to you, I do want you to pause the video and try to do this on your own because we are going to only have one example of how to do this. You could at least pause the video and attempt it until you get stuck, and then you can just resume the video as well. But I do want you guys to start trying to do things on your own. All right, here we have our number line already there for us. It's counting by tens. Make sure if we ever do a number line for a box and whisker plot, it has equal increments. So it's counting by tens. You don't have to start at 0. Let's say our min was like 40. We could start our number line at 40 and go to 100 or until we need to stop. Okay. Our min is 10, so we're going to put a dot on our min. Our max is 65, so we're going to find where 65 is. Put a dot. Q1 is 20. We're going to find where that is. Put a dot. Q2 is 40. Q3 is 50. Now, we are going to draw our box around our Q1, which is 20, and Q3, which is 50. We're going to draw that box. Okay, we're going to put a line down the Q2, and then we are going to make our whiskers out to our min and our max. And that is it. So once the hardest part is probably finding the 5-number summary. The rest of it, it's pretty simple, just remembering how to make it. There's a box and 2 whiskers. Last thing you might do is be asked questions about a box and whisker plot. So we're just going to review how to figure that's about. Remember at the beginning of the lesson that I had said our data is split into quartiles, or 4 parts. Okay, so if we think of like a number line that's split into 4, remember that's 3 tick marks. 1, 2, 3. Here's, I'm going to do this in a different color. Our first part, our second part, our third part, and our fourth part, and each one of those parts are equal. Even though in the graph it might not look like it, each one of those parts contains the same amount of numbers. So if we look at, like, our lower quartile is 1, 2, 3, 4 numbers. Upper quartile is 1, 2, 3, 4 numbers. When we split it by finding the Q1, Q2, and Q3, we have 2 numbers, 2 numbers, 2 numbers, 2 numbers. Same thing here. Remember, we kind of ignore that one. We have 2 numbers, 2 numbers, 2 numbers, 2 numbers. Okay, so it's splitting our data into equal parts, into 4 equal parts. Okay, so what fraction or percent of the dunk tank requires less than 500 gallons? So right here we have 500 gallons. This is a dunk tank. You might have seen this like at a carnival, festival, something like that. You try to throw the ball at this little target and it drops their seat out from under them. They get dunked in the tank. The box and whisker plot is representing the number of gallons for different types of dunk tanks that are offered by a company. Okay, so we want to know what fraction or percent of the dunk tanks require less than 500 gallons. So we want to know what fraction or percent of our data is 500 or less. Okay, well, if we put in our parts here, here's our Q1, or sorry, our min, Q1, Q2, Q3, max. So here we have part 1, part 2, part 3, and part 4. Now these are equal parts. Like I said, even though the graph might not look like it, there's the same amount of data values in each of those parts, just like I showed you in our data list above. So what this means is if they're split into equal parts, it means that this is 1/4 or 25% of the data, part 1. It also means that part 2 is 1/4 or 25% of the data, which also means part 3 is 1/4 or 25% of the data. Same with part 4 is 1/4 of our data or 25%, because if we added up all these percents, we'd get to 100. If we added up all these fourths, we'd get to 1 whole. So what fraction of the dunk tanks require less than 500? We're looking at these two parts. So we'd have 1/4 plus 1/4, which would be 2/4. We'd simplify 2/4 to be 1/2. So that would be the fraction. The percent would be 25% for this part, 25% for this part, which would be 50%. So it's either 1/2 or 50%. Last question is going to ask, what is the shape of distribution for the graph? So I'm going to erase all the things that I drew on this so we can just visualize it a little better. Now, when we learned with histograms shapes of distribution, it was that tail that we looked for. So we had that bell curve, and the side with the longer tail was the side that it's skewed. So in a box and whisker plot, same thing. The tail is going to be the whisker that's the longest. So notice how this whisker is a little bit longer than this one. So this is going to be our tail, and it's going to be skewed to whatever side that tail is on. So this is going to be skewed right. Okay. Now this is just a little bit longer, so you could also say slightly skewed right, and I would accept that. All right, so you're done with your note page. However, I do want you to watch me just do some more examples of that shape of distribution, just so we can see more. Examples. So this one, we would look at which whisker is longer. That's what we consider the tail. And that's the side that it's skewed on. So this would be skewed left, because that left tail or that left whisker is longer. A symmetric box and whisker plot would look something like this, where it's all about the same. Okay. And that is all.